acceptable, so not to have one giant asphalt surface in the center. There's a couple other criteria, and I'll let the design team talk to those as well. And just in case that's not acceptable to council, we do have a fallback. I think staff and our design team all agree that the fallback is not as good of an approach as the one we've got with the 1.5. Really, it's only 7 stalls along the highway and 11 along Pioneer Crescent. And I think it's only about 30% of the frontage that's affected by this. But as you can see, if we have to tighten it up towards the center, we will lose a lot of that kind of landscaped island piece in the center. Those 2 major shade trees and possibly that beautiful willow that is one of the only trees that can be retained on site at the moment. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you hear the design presentations. Another item that you don't see updated on our plans right now, we were speaking to staff. There's a requirement to have, it's not a requirement, it's a guideline to have a 2-meter fence separating residential uses from commercial uses within this DPA. Staff came to us with a good idea, which was to actually flip some of the landscaping onto the outside of that fence to make it less of a harsh transition between this and the residential components. We totally agree with that. So what you see here is just a little exhibit showing what we would do, which is have basically 1 meter of planting on one side of the fence towards the residential properties, while retaining sufficient space for vehicle overhang on the other side and a low planting. The only other update that you don't see corrected on your plans to the date of this meeting is staff identified that this one overhead light, which is adjacent to that property, which is currently a residential use that I just mentioned at the very beginning. We're actually going to move that over just to make sure 100% that there's no light trespass onto that property and that we are retaining our dark sky compliance on the site. And with that, I will turn it over to our project architect, Rob, and he will give you an overview of the architecture. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Regarding the buildings themselves, we have one restaurant tenant and one multi-commercial tenancy on the site. The restaurant tenant is currently designed to be a Wendy's with an outdoor patio, and I will just quickly share my screen on just a quick rendering of what that will, a similar rendering. We don't do have specific renderings on a specific building by building scenario, but we do have a typical rendering so you can see what the building is anticipated to look like. So I hope everyone can see my screen. And if anyone can't see my screen, let me know. Essentially, this is just a typical style rendering of what the building is going to look like in terms of colors and materials for the Wendy's itself. Regarding the commercial building itself, I will bring up the rendering now of the commercial building itself. It's a 3-tenant building. Right now, we currently have 1 tenant on the south side, and the middle tenant and north side tenant is currently vacant at the moment. So let me just bring up the renderings on that. So everyone should be able to see the screen on that. So the design concept and the materials are to match the local conditions, along with the concept of retail use. With the again, this is the tenant here that is currently a tenant in the middle and end, currently are vacant at the moment. The south side elevation, which is facing the highway. And then on the next page, we've got the rear elevation, which faces west. And then the north elevation, which is facing the other street on the other side. Is there any questions regarding the design of the buildings itself, or will we hold the questions till the end of the presentation?
I think we normally hold the questions to the end, don't we, folks? So
okay,
you can keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can speak briefly about the landscape. I think it's my turn. Nigel covered off most of, stole most of my thunder, as we say, but whoops. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I won't go to the section first. Bear with me, I'm worse than Nigel when it comes to technology. Okay, so this is the landscape plan, which actually Nigel showed at the beginning, and he did zoom in. So I'll just talk about it generally, and if there's any place you want me to zoom in when there's a discussion, we can go back and take a closer look. So I think, again, and Nigel alluded to much of this, so I apologize for any repetition. All the surface parking and service areas are screened from adjacent residential districts, road frontages, and public spaces with a 1.5 meter landscape strip minimum around the developed portion of the site. The Pioneer Crescent frontage and adjacent residential lots are also screened with a 2 meter tall solid timber fence. So again, Nigel alluded to this section that shows, our plan shows the fence along the property line, but the city requested that we show what it would look like to, I apparently don't know how to pan either, sorry. Nope. Oh, there we go. So what it would look like to put the fence off the property line and have planting facing Pioneer Crescent, and the street trees then also would be on the Pioneer Crescent side. The boulevard is actually quite wide on Pioneer Crescent as well, which is nice. So it provides just even a little bit more buffer to that residential use that's on the other side of the street. This indicates the existing overhead utilities and the proposed street trees that will be part of the later process. If we go over to the, oops. Sorry. That's the island in the middle of the parking lot shown here. So you can see we're proposing a nice substantial shade trees where we can get them. And then we've got some height on the screening on the highway side in front of the parking as well. And again, we're under wires again here. So the street trees will be low, but there'll be street trees on site as well as off site as part of the off site improvements for the city. Okay. So pedestrian circulation to and from the bill is indicated, showing a different sort of pattern. We're thinking that it would be a flush concrete surface with score patterning. So obviously vehicles would still be able to maneuver around, but it would indicate that that's where pedestrians will be headed in and out of. So we've got entrances in and out of the site here, and then also here down in the picnic area. And again, so there is a picnic area with 2 picnic tables and a couple of bollard lights located at this end of the site. All of the plant species on the plant list are chosen for drought tolerance, suitability to Parksville, and deer resistance, as everyone knows around here. The actual plants that are native to Vancouver Island represent about 53% of the plant palette. And the refuse areas, there's one here and one here behind building A, will be screened with a 2 meter high screen, which is detailed on sheet L2. And we have proposed full cutoff flat lens overhead lights throughout the site. This will be verified by an electrical engineer at the time when we get to that point. But I have shown, a handful of lights throughout the parking area. And again, there is bollard lights that will be associated with the park benches here, or the picnic tables, apologize. And and then this area here is indicated as a stormwater infiltration facility, which sounds like it could end up being an important part of this project. And I will let Scott hopefully do a more coherent presentation of his work next. Thank you.
We're actually not letting Scott present. He's just here to talk about any technical issues that may
Okay.
come up.
If you have questions, ask Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for being horrible at that.
Yeah, thanks for bearing through the technical difficulties, everyone. And with that, back to you, Chair.
Okay, well, I guess we're in a position to ask a few questions. Maybe I'll just go. I'm seeing a presentation on the top of the screen, so and I look like I'm first. So maybe if you don't mind, I'll wade in first. When I looked at the project, I wasn't as concerned about the 1.5 meter setback on the highway side. I didn't think that was critical. So I'm glad to see that on the other side, you've done something with moving the fence and increasing the landscaping. I think probably the most sensitive thing there is the residential area. So I like that. I was maybe a little concerned about it when it was not in that orientation. I wondered how people get from Wendy's to the picnic area. It looks like they have to cross the drive-through traffic, which maybe is going to be quite busy. Is there any plans to maybe delineate a walkway across that, or a sort of a yield to pedestrians? Because it looks like a dicey spot to go over to the picnic area, unless that's not, kind of exclusively for the use of Wendy's. So just a thought there.
If I may, since it's site plan related, there's actually a grade break. So to actually access that picnic area, you have to go out onto the city sidewalk and walk around. Yeah.
Okay, that I didn't catch that on the elevations. Thank you. Architectural question. I noticed that one of the exterior materials is EIFS, which is an exterior insulation paneling kind of, and if I'm not mistaken from my previous experience, is a stucco applied to basically an insulation foam. This would be for you, Rob. It's just a thought that I was involved in a project where that was used on the outside, and much to our surprise, later on in the project, there were 23 woodpecker nests in the EIFS. And that was quite a surprise. This strikes me as a site that's very close to treat areas, and we have a lot of woodpeckers in Parksville. And I just wondered what led you to the decision to use EIFS, whether that's a Wendy's standard or whether it's a choice for this project.
On the Wendy's building itself, that's the Wendy's standard at the moment on that building. And that is currently the design standard that Wendy's is using across the board in both the US and Canada. So that's what we chose for that material on the Wendy's building. On the retail building, we minimized the stucco to only the signage areas on the storefront elevation. From our experience in commercial retail, when tenants change in and out, they have to change a sign. And there's not a lot of materials that you can use that over 2 or 3 sign changes, over 2 or 3 tenant changes, you don't see a whole bunch of holes. In our experience, stucco is the best material when signs are changing out, because you can drill holes in, you can patch them, repair them, repaint that small little area of the stucco, and the new tenant can go in, so that you're constantly keeping the storefront of your building, the main face that faces all the customers and the parking lot, always looks clean and updated and new. If you think of let's say a siding building, once you take a sign off siding, you will always have those holes there, and there's no way you can hide them. They will always be there. So on the commercial building, we minimize the stucco just to the sign areas on the storefront itself to minimize that.
And I would suspect that Wendy's are pretty inflexible about the use of the materials they commonly use on their sort of standard buildings.
We can ask the question.
Yeah.
And we can ask the question.
It's just a thought. As I say, the circumstances sound ridiculous, but it was on an 8-story building, and it was pretty shocking to have that happen.
Yeah, that would be shocking. Yes.
I don't think I have too many other comments. We're part of our work is to address the form and how it fits into the remainder of the commercial areas. So we're not held to this sort of West Coast architecture thing that we are with other development areas. And I think they're pretty typical commercial buildings that kind of fit that scale and size. So that would be my only comment there. I think that was about all I had. Next on my screen looks to be Ivan.
Oh. I wonder if we could go to the parking plan. Can someone bring that up?
Eric, can you bring up the LA site plan on your computer? There should be a share screen button at the bottom. You may have to hover over it. No? Yeah, I'll skip rooms here and see if I can figure it out.
Well, maybe you could just, I could describe what I'm after here. The you there, Nigel?
I think you might still be trying to bring it up.
Sorry about that again, everyone. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, go ahead, Ivan, sorry.
So can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so this island in the middle here.
Oh, that was somebody else's cursor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Here, yeah, the island in the middle.
Okay, so if this was reversed so that this green space was on this side, I think that would soften the appearance of this parking lot for starters.
I'm sorry, if it was moved to where?
So if this planted area was on the south side rather than on the north side.
Okay, along the highway, you mean?
Oh, no. Yeah, where?
Just mirror the whole
Oh,
island.
just flip. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just mirror the whole island.
So then I think also it would provide shade for the cars that would then be on the north side of that. It's just something that it would just lessen the impact of those cars parked over there. I don't have a problem with the setback over here. This one, I think, you know, the boulevard on the Pioneer Crescent side is so large. I don't see that you have to move the fence in. I would keep it as far out as possible, and if possible, plant on the boulevard side, because nothing else is going to happen there. But then it would A, give the appearance that the site was bigger, and also soften that fence in front of the parking. So I think contrary to what you were proposing there of moving the fence in, I would rather keep it right on the outside. As Tony said, while commercial buildings, we don't have the same kind of concerns about West Coast style as we do for residential. And I guess it's an improvement on what was there right now, which is nothing. I also wonder about signage, which I'm pretty sure that Wendy's is going to have a great big sign somewhere up there, and maybe the other guys as well. And that's
Sorry to interrupt, and we didn't cover it. We do have a sign right here that will be designed to meet the city's bylaw, but has not been designed yet. I think that'll be part of the later process.
okay. Then okay. Also, if there could be, I think if there was access, as Tony mentioned, to these picnic tables that went through the site instead of all the way around the sidewalk out here, I think it would be beneficial to the patrons of Wendy's that they had
There-
that.
Just a reminder, everyone, at the front of our building is currently anticipated to be an outdoor seating area in front of the Wendy's itself. If you look at the building on the site plan that you're looking at right now, basically the entire west side, which is the left side, that essential square, I believe if you zoom in, there's a bike parking rack kind of at the bottom right corner of that. Yes, so that square is essentially an outdoor seating area for the Wendy's itself. I can pull up
Yeah,
my
if you
site
wanted to-
plan. Yeah, let me just share my screen. I'll
Yeah.
pull up the floor plan.
Or, I mean, I'd
If you
say
could,
that.
if you can stop
But,
sharing.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen here just to remind, remind everybody. So if everyone can see my screen here.
Yep.
So basically this building is currently drawn, flipped 180 degrees of what the site plan shows right now. So this rectangle here is rectangle square is essentially the outdoor seating area for the Wendy's itself.
And I think I would add to that comment too.
If I do this, this is now the orientation that the building is going to be on site. So on this side, we're going to have basically some outdoor seating for the Wendy's patrons themselves.
And just to chime in, Rob, I believe our seating area is actually twice the size of the one shown here.
This was just a plan that I pulled up.
If I can just jump in quickly to Ivan's comment, yeah, there is a grade break there. So in terms of an accessible route, people would still have to go out onto the city sidewalk, but we could put a stair connection in there. We originally did have a connection until we required the grade break to make the stormwater drainage work. So it is something we could look at if it's important to the panel.
Okay. I guess I have no other objections other than the fact that I really don't like drive-thrus, that people are too lazy to get out of their cars and go and buy their food. And the poor people in Pioneer Crescent are going to get gassed there. But that's part of the zoning. So that's my comments.
It'll all be electric cars by 2040 though, so they won't get cast out for long.
Can I ask a question relative to what Ivan said? He had mentioned his preference about the fence on the other side, and yet I think I heard that was a Parksville request, was it not, to have the fence moved? Did I hear that at the beginning of the presentation?
Yes, it was a staff request. We don't mind the idea. We're kind of neither here nor there on the item, so we'll look to you for advice.
I think they just wanted us to illustrate it for this presentation so we can have the discussion. I think that was
okay.
I'd just like to point out one thing. If the pedestrian connection from the Wendy's to the picnic tables to the east, there is an opportunity on the south side of the building B to run a patio connection, but then there's a bunch of landscaping there that we would lose in order to remove the landscaping to put a sidewalk. Then we could come across the drive aisle and then address the grade separations to connect. So there is that consideration that needs to be looked at as well.
And I think we were considering, do we want to encourage people to be walking through the drive-through too? So we kind of, we thought about it, and yeah, it was considered.
Yeah, it might be a case of just delineating something and ask people to not stop in the hatched area of the drive-through, so there's always a pass through there. But I appreciate your comment about safety. Okay, Marilyn, do you like to go last or would you go now? You just happen to be next on my screen.
No, I'll go last if I'm allowed to speak at all. But yeah, I'll wait till everyone speaks. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess we're over to Ian.
Oh, hi. Looking at the site, it's obvious. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, good. I think a great amount of pain has been taken to make the site work because it's not a very regular site. So I've got to hand it to you for that, for being able to fit in the complexity of traffic and pedestrians on the site. I do have some concerns. Can you see my cursor if I move it around?
I don't think we can. There's a cursor over on the top right. Is that you moving right now?
No,
That's me, but if you guide me around, I can try and find where you're pointing to.
okay. I was looking at the overlay of the complexity of the circulation with cars crossing paths to each other. If you entered the drive-through, I mean the site from the highway, yes, from that entrance, and at that time you are trying to make a choice about which building you're going to go to, building A or building B. If you're going to go to Wendy's, I'm not sure how you would do it. Would you turn right immediately or go up and over around the central landscape area? No, not right, not that immediate right. Would you go further up and then go around? So that's one question. While you're doing that, you are in conflict with cars exiting, trying to exit from the Wendy's parking lot, and also trying to exit from the cars that are in the drive-through at Wendy's. No.
Oh, up here.
Building B, yeah. They're moving along going to the west, I guess, if you want to call it that, and trying to drive around that central landscaped area. Yeah, they're trying to do that, exactly that, and turn and come down. While you're doing that, you have cars trying to enter the other drive-through for building A, and you also have cars trying to exit from building A to get onto the highway. You also have cars backing out from building A going across that space. And what I've noticed is that the tree or the plant in the right next to your cursor on the right, yeah, right there, that landscape area is actually squeezing the flow of the vehicles as they enter the site. I'm just wondering if more space can be given because there are just too many things happening right in that area. I think it's going to be kind of dangerous, quite honestly. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about that. And if anybody's trying to get from building A to building B, that adds another layer of complexity on it. So the circulation, I think, really needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully. Going back to that central tree where you have your cursor, if that entire landscaped area with the 5 car spaces or 6, whatever it is, was moved to the right, to the east, it might open up that space a little bit more for cars entering the site, entering and leaving the site. There's a lot of things happening here. We have 2 buildings, both have drive-throughs, both entering and exiting right off that main entrance. So I think there's a few issues there that I wonder if we can have the proponent kind of comment on some of those things I'm mentioning.
Sure. I think Scott thought he was going to get off scot-free, but Scott, I'm going to let you speak to that a bit. I think Scott did have some ideas actually about making this a one-way circuit. So over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, that was my idea, to alleviate some of the congestion as people are entering and exiting the site from the highway, was to create a clockwise, one-directional circulation. Is that clockwise or?
This is clockwise from
And-
Yeah,
God's
s-
perspective.
Sorry, you're right. I was thinking the other way, so anti-clockwise. So you enter, and you're always going to the right, and then you're going around the island, and it would all be in one direction. And I think we can do that with tightening up the drive aisles and using paint arrows. That was just one idea that we thought might help keep the flow going in one direction and alleviate some of the congestion.
There's still a lot going on right at the entry to the Island Highway, with the exit being so close, the exit of Building A, the drive-through exit, exiting just there, cars turning in, and cars also trying to come out of the Wendy's parking lot and get onto that side as well. I'm not sure how this can be solved easily, but it's tricky. I just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, you have people trying to get the buildings on the right and trying to get the buildings on the left, but you have one entrance and one exit. So everything has to be reversed. In other words, people go clockwise to one side and then anti-clockwise on the other, Building A, and people are trying to cross the site. If there's no parking space, somebody's going to be walking from either Building A or the parking, say, on Pioneer Crescent and trying to make their way back to the building. I really think that something should happen there to make that easier. Are we using up all of the car spaces that we're allowed, or are we in excess of car spaces?
We are slightly in excess, but there's a reason for that. We think it's going to be really busy and well attended.
Yeah, it is going to be busy.
And based on the DPA guidelines, we're really sensitive about spilling parking over onto Pioneer Crescent, since there is no roadside parking on the Island Highway,
Yeah.
which is why we were trying to maximize the parking. It's actually Lee's direction, our client, to do so as well, and I do support that. Another thing to consider as well, Ian, is we don't have any small car stalls on this. Actually, we might have one. And that's also intentional because of our demographic.
Right.
Yeah, we could tighten it up, but this is really where we want to be. Scott's had a hard look at it. The folks at CCD have had a hard look at it, but we will have another look at those technical aspects after this. But I think we are there. Is it perfect? Well, we'll back check with the engineer and make sure.
Yeah, the tree right in the middle of the site on that landscape island. I'm just wondering, that one there. I'm just wondering whether that whole island could be moved to the right. So that cars entering do not have to suddenly begin to shift towards the left, which is going to, be bumping into the handicap parking as they're coming out or going in. And I just think it's creating a neck that isn't necessary.
Yeah. Can I just speak to Scott a bit here? Scott, is this the old width of the entry access? I believe we're reducing it to 9 meters now.
Yes, we've been asked by staff to reduce it to 9 meters to meet their bylaws.
And what's
so it's
shown
currently
at 11?
It's shown at 10, so we have to reduce it by 1 meter.
So we'll get a lot closer to what you're talking about, Ian, and that's already been asked for by engineering. So that's actually going to be reduced to a 9 meter throat coming in. Another point of reference, just this is a little bit different in Parksville than a lot of other jurisdictions. These aisles are actually 7.5 meters as opposed to 6 on the parking. So there is quite a bit of asphalt area in there for turning radii and such. But yes, agreed. Lining those two is likely going to happen through that change in the access.
And I don't have any objections about the variances, the setback variances at all. In fact, I was kind of wondering whether we could swap the variance on Pioneer Crescent and put that extra width on the highway side, just to give that a little bit more green space on that side of the highway. In other words, everything shifts to the top of the screen, in other words. But that's, I'm not fussy about that, whatever decision you come to. But generally speaking, I'm in total support of the variances for the setbacks. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
The actual building elevations and so on, I don't have too much to say about it because they're standard commercial buildings. I just wished it wasn't so gray, because Parksville is a very cheery place, and I don't think we should be, making it less cheery. I think we should be brightening up the buildings as much as we can. So the gray on gray on gray, well, that's my personal preference anyway. So
No problem. We can take a look at that.
yeah. Thank you.
All right. So I guess it's Marilyn.
Yeah, thank you. So I have to agree with Ian. This is what I looked at: the traffic flow, circulation pattern, and worried about pedestrians. And I have a question: why do you have 2 drive-thrus? Do you need 2 drive-thrus? Because that would solve some of that issue with the flow of traffic. So I wondered about that, if maybe someone could answer.
Lee, do you want to speak to that? You got to unmute yourself there.
Yeah, of course. Hi, Marilyn. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for your comment. Yeah, we do a lot of business in lots of different places for retailers that want to be in different communities, and Wendy's has wanted to be here. They have to function with the drive-through. That's their business model across North America. And part of Building A is actually Popeyes, which is a chicken concept. And again, they have to function with a drive-through. It's been promised to them through the leasing commitments we've made. And, we'll do our best. I think there's some other things that we didn't touch on in terms of some wayfinding signage that we could add, and some speed reduction stuff, maybe with some lines that might help alleviate any confusions as to how you get into the drive-through facilities. But it is critical to our business plan and our ability to do the redevelopment to have the 2 drive-through situations. So you can have our promise that we'll make it as best as possible. And like Nigel has said, it won't be perfect, but we're taking lots of care and thought into how it works to get it as darn close as we can.
Okay, thanks. And one of the other questions, I know I'm familiar with Popeyes. My son is a dual citizen. He lives in the States, so he lived on Popeyes while he was getting his pilot's license. And so I'm very familiar with it.
Yes.
I want to also, just to mention, the new quality foods we have in town. I've driven through a few times, and it does bring that kind of confusion to mind. So I don't know whether any of you could take a drive around that, but it's a bit confusing right now. Cars are coming and going in all directions. So that came to mind as soon as I saw this. Nice. I love the rain garden. I like the project. It's just, and I will have to say, color. So we're having our downtown revite workshop that I've been asking for over a year next week. And one of the things that I think is really important for Parksville, as Ian said, is color. So I would go along with that. That's one of the things that I'm going to push is.
Yeah, well, we have no problem looking at the material colors. Again, it's always hard when we have a large group of people to pick a color pattern that's best. But Rob's going to show us some different ones, and we can circle back through Nigel with you guys. Happy to look at that.
That would be great, because I think that's one of the things that would be really nice to bring Parksville appearance up a bit. We have a lot of bland, not so pretty buildings here, and and even to speak to parking. I mean, one of the things I'd like to push through is that we park on the Island Highway and give it a road diet. So, but that might take a while to get to. And the other thing I just wanted to ask is, had you ever considered permeable pavers or something that is more permeable for the all of your asphalt?
I can
It'd be a good one to talk to Scott about, but go ahead, Nigel.
I can jump in. And apologies. We should have mentioned these areas shown in white on the landscape plan. These are actually tactile concrete separations. So there's a difference in material. There's a material change where it's a pedestrian route versus an automobile route. And that was intentional. So once your tire rolls on this, you'll know that you're on a pedestrian concrete walkway. Further to the point of, have we looked at pervious paving? Well, you kind of got to get your biggest bang for the buck. And on this one, everything is draining to a stormwater facility. So the opportunity for infiltration isn't really as key as detaining that water on site prior to have it flow into the streams on a first flush event. So if I were to make a choice, it would be to have the large detention facility. A one facility that requires, limited maintenance, you just look into the cap and you can see whether it's plugged or not, versus pervious paving that, we really thought was a great idea when we were doing GVRD stormwater source controls back in 2005. But the problem is you have to actually vacuum those things out, and they have to be maintained to a pretty high standard for them actually to allow the water to infiltrate. So I like above ground things, the ditch you can look into and see whether it's clogged, versus things with complex geogrids and subsurface systems. So that was a choice we made as a team earlier on.
Oh, thanks. That was a great explanation. I didn't understand that. Thanks, Ninja. Great, thank you. I've asked my questions. Thanks for the answers.
Any other questions from people who've been through already?
I need to go through.
Sorry, I
haven't had a question yet.
Go ahead.
Okay, I first of all, I'd like to say I agree with Ian on the traffic flow. That was my biggest concern on this layout. Then I don't know if this is the time to raise it, but there was mention of the IDA lighting, and I noticed that they're talking of 40K as the color temperature. My understanding of IDA is that it should be no more than a 30K color temperature to meet the LEED requirement and the IDA standard.
I can speak to a little bit to the lighting. So I'm not an electrical engineer. I showed the cut sheets for the lighting to give you an idea, a sense of what the fixture will look like. We will rely on an electrical engineer to determine the actual color of the light and the type of light. It will be LED for sure, 100%. But lighting colors is not my bailiwick, and I definitely will leave it up to the professional to deal with that later in the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then being new to Parksville, I understood that there was the area just to, I think it's just one moment, the Martindale Road is subject to quite a lot of flooding. And if that's correct, is there any likelihood of any flooding?
No,
into the storm system here?
That's quite a ways away from this site. It's
Is
actually
it?
quite down already. It's in the regional district of Nanaimo. Actually, it's to the south of this site.
Okay, so we're nowhere near the floodplains.
Yeah, you should take a drive down there. You can tell where the flooding happens. It's got quite a dip there. So, and there's mobile home
Thank
park.
you.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, my apologies, Bob. I just wanted to point out you came up on my screen as owner, not with your name, and I thought that's interesting.
Well,
Develop
I own the building.
You might want to change that caption if you can do that.
Okay, if my tech savvy skills are not that great on this.
I think it's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not alone, obviously.
So again, any other questions from the panel? Doesn't look like it. So thank you for your presentation and for answering our questions, being patient. It's appreciated.
Thank you for being patient.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Thank you for being patient. We apologize with the technical difficulties. Modern times, I guess.
Okay, so I guess you can leave, and we'll have our little after meeting. At this point, Sarah, should I be doing anything? Thanks for your guide. Yep.
You don't actually leave, so you have the dialogue and discuss as a panel the recommendations.
Yes.
So they until we have the recommendations formalized.
You know, I have to apologize. I can barely hear you, Sarah.
Are you sure? Sorry, it's hard with the mask on. My apologies.
Yeah.
So I was just saying that they actually stay on the line. So the panel will be discussing what recommendations are that they want, and then we'll let them know what those recommendations are. So if the presenters and the applicants can stay on the line, and the panel can discuss what options they wanted to go with for those.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've raised a number of points. I think one of them is there's been a couple of different opinions on the setbacks, but no major disagreements about them. We've talked about traffic flow in the parking lot. We've talked about colors on the buildings. And I think we've talked about access to the picnic area to the east versus going on the outside. I'm not sure we got a huge consensus. I think we did on colors. I think we would like to revisit the color of the building and see if we can brighten things up.
No problem.
I think that I guess I'd like to poll the panel as to what the feeling is on access to the picnic area. Is that a yay or nay from going across the drive aisle with maybe a stair to the parking or the picnic area versus going around the outside? Anybody want to volunteer?
I'm in
What
favor
are
of.
you referring to as a picnic area?
Sorry?
Which exact part?
East end little green area is a picnic area with the water detention.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So it's access across from building B to that area. Are we in favor of making a recommendation to include something like that?
Well, I think it's pretty remote the way it's located right now, and you have to go through great lengths to get to it if you really wanted to get there. So I'm not sure how well it'll be used, but it's a very difficult piece of site because it's long and pointy and triangular, so it's not easy. But if it was a little bit accessible, that would be useful.
My apologies, that was my end. Bob, your feelings on that one?
Well, I think it's won't be used very much, but it's certainly maybe somebody, I was going to say while they're waiting for their EV to be charged, but I didn't see an EV station there, but they may have to wander around and sit in that green area, but it's a little bit of a walk.
And I'm not sure I caught what you had to say on that matter, Ivan.
Well, I'm in favor of. I think that it's an added amenity for the restaurant. So why cut it off from the rest of the development? You know, and make it difficult for the customers to go out there. And crossing that drive aisle, it's not like they're speeding through there. They're doing 5 miles an hour down there. I don't think it's dangerous. So
yeah,
I'm in favor of having some access to that.
I have to admit that I am as well. I guess that's why I brought it up. Marilyn?
Well, if I'm allowed to say that, you know, you've got an access on the other side. And I think it's building, which building is it? So the first building with Popeyes, building A, you have the same issue with people crossing over, I believe. So I'm not sure there's much of a difference there, is there? You see the cars going around the across that walkway. So I would think that it would be similar.
But that doesn't go anywhere, does it, from building A?
No, but what I'm saying is you've still got people crossing in front.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Same idea of people crossing, so I can't really see any difference in having a cross. I mean, it would make it more accessible because it's a pretty area and people might take their things.
Yeah.
if they are charging their car, if they have an EV charger there.
Okay, so we'll probably make a recommendation regarding that. The circulation, and I'm sorry, I got somebody who just won't take no for an answer here, people. Yeah, I was going to say the circulation of the traffic. I have to. I'll start with that one myself. I was. Must be important. I'm not too sure how to mute that when I'm on Zoom, so I apologize. Anyway, I was just thinking the counterclockwise circulation in my mind when it was being described seemed like a possible solution, perhaps in harmony with moving that interior parking bay or island over a little bit. So I like the one-way traffic idea. It might require some signage to make it happen. But again, I would be interested in everybody's feedback on that one.
I'm not sure that having an anti-clockwise circulation across the entire site is going to solve it, because it just makes it very torturous to get to building A.
Mm-hmm.
And people won't follow it. They will take the shortcut.
So Tony, we may just want to identify sort of the key items here and try to relate them to a development permit guideline and let the applicants take those back to their team and try to determine some solutions to address them.
So perhaps just a recommendation to re-examine parking lot circulation and leave it as a general term.
Yeah, that might be good. Obviously, you can go as detailed as you'd like, but.
Well, it's probably a good idea not to try and tell people what to do and to just identify an issue. There's design professionals on here, so we can leave it with them, I'm sure. And then we were specifically asked to look at the setbacks because that's a variance application. I sense that nobody really objects to them. I've heard a couple of alternatives about swapping them or leaving the fence on one side versus the other, but specifically, I would think that the main issue is, are we concerned with the 1.5 meter setbacks on each side? And I didn't detect that as being basically a deal breaker for anybody. Does anybody feel differently?
No, I'm in favor of the variances. I think they're fine the way it's been shown.
Any other comments on that one?
Well, just if I may, about the traffic flow, I don't see it as a huge problem. I don't think that it's going to be that busy in there that it's going to cause so much conflict. And I don't think that it really needs any more guidance than is there. I think people will sort it out.
Okay. Did I miss anything that we discussed that anybody wants to bring up at this point regarding the development? No, I'll take that as a no. Ian, you came up on the screen. Was there anything there?
No, I think you've kind of dealt with most of the issues.
Okay. So once again, Sarah, a little guidance for me.
So I have written down that what you were talking about were the variance and the setbacks.
Yep.
Colors, traffic flow, and access to the picnic area.
Yep.
So those were the four that I had noted. If you'd like, I can go through what development permit area guidelines those could potentially be tied to.
Yeah, that would be great.
So development permit area 3, guideline 1G states exterior finishes and colors that are appropriate to the natural heritage of the area should be employed. So I don't know if that addresses the color item that you've mentioned. I don't see that we have a specific DP guideline for traffic flow, but you could always comment on that for sure. Just trying to see here. And then item 2, guideline 2C, we have in here all surface parking areas shall generally contain landscaping which buffers parking areas from adjacent properties. Maybe. Or 2B, which is landscape pedestrian walkways should be provided to and from buildings and parking areas. That may address some of your concerns with the access to the picnic tables.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That one might fit.
Okay, so 2B. 1G and 2B. So, the only other one that may relate to the colors is development permit area guideline 1C, which is buildings should be generally articulated to avoid large expanses of any one materials. But I didn't hear conversations about material, it was more so color. Maybe not color.
Yeah, it was color. There are, I think, adequate numbers of materials on the front. I don't know that it needs more of that, but yeah, I mean, we can put it underneath that one. I don't know that it fits under the heritage one because it's a commercial area already, and I don't know that there's anything that's sort of established by the existing building. So why don't we go with the materials?
Do they want to include re-examine parking lot circulation in the recommendation?
Okay, did you want to include reconsider parking lot circulation as part of your recommendation?
Yeah, reconsider, let's just say an improvement in parking lots circulation, and that should cover it.
All right, so, and then what did you want the outcome to be? Do you want the development permit with variance be accepted as presented with consideration of the following items to be considered for staff review, or did you want it to go back to the panel? Like, what would you like the applicants to be doing?
Does the panel feel that we need another look at this?
Or maybe it can be brought up at another meeting if we have another meeting soon. If we don't have another meeting soon, then I think maybe staff should deal with it.
Yeah, so we have done that in the past. So that would be sort of that for the recommendation that the applicant would revisit the following aspects, and typically those would just be submitted to staff, and then we proceed to council. The advisory design panel meets typically once a month. So the next meeting isn't scheduled until, I believe, June 20th.
Yeah, so probably best that it goes to staff and not comes back to us would be my thought. It's not major enough to really reconvene to look at it again.
Yeah, that's a long way off. So I'm in favor of that. Let staff deal with it.
All right.
A mover and seconder.
Okay, so Tony, we have the recommendations drafted. If we could get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll circulate those recommendations to you via email.
So could somebody move that we adopt these recommendations? Seconder?
I can second.
Thank you.
And Tony, so we just need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yes. So would somebody move to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Seconder?
Don't need a seconder.
I don't think I can do it as chairman.
Well, thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Yeah, and thanks for your help. I hadn't done this before, so I appreciate you walking me through it. even though you watch it, it's like driving. If you're not the one who's driving, you don't know the route to the place you're going, but you've been there a million times as a passenger. So that was great. And thanks again for the presentation.
And thank you, everybody, for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. Nice to meet you all. And if somebody just wants to pick the color of the building, they can right now. Alan, Marilyn, you want to pick it? No? No
I
takers?
dare not, because
No,
I'm not going down that road. I could
Okay,
be.
see, it's
I
so
could be
hard.
over coffee and talk to you about color, but I'm not picking that color.
no guts, no glory.
I have lots of guts, but I'm not doing it.
Not for colors.
And I'll fall back on you, Rob. You better be a good one.
No problem. We'll look at it again and take care of it.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
for your
everyone.
time.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Bye.
Care.
Bye.